Welcome to the Here's Waldo podcast, where we sit down with top visionaries and creatives in the video game industry. Together, we'll unravel their journeys and learn more about the path they're forging ahead. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hi, I'm Lizzie Mintis. I'm the founder and CEO of Here's Waldo Recruiting. We are a boutique video game recruitment firm, and this is the Here's Waldo podcast. In every episode, we get to talk to creatives, founders, and executives about their journey. You will get to sneak peek into the future of the video game industry and hear lessons from their journey. This episode is brought to you by Here's Waldo Recruiting. We focus on game and game-adjacent tech and value quality over quantity. Before introducing today's guest, I want to give a big thank you to Bill for introducing us and for hanging out with me at DICE. You're awesome. Today, we have Robin Lavallée with us. Robin is originally from Canada and worked at Ubisoft, Prima, 2K Games, and Meta. He is now the co-founder and CEO of Implicit Conversions, which is a developer porting classic video games using emulation technology. Let's get started. Thank you for being here today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
I hope I did okay on your beautiful French name as an American.
Almost. Lavallée, yes.
Yeah, the best I could do. So today we're going to cover emulation technology, game hardware, accidental entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship in general, and building a remote team. But first, I would love for you to share more about what Implicit Conversions is.
Yeah, so Implicit Conversions is a company that builds emulation technology. And what does that mean is that, we're doing port of games, but without the source code. So most games, when you want to do let's say you take old games or any games, you say, well, I got this game on the Switch, I want it on the Xbox or PC. Well, you get the source code, you write the source code, and you build it, and then that looks easy, but that's basically what people do. What we do is that we take old games, and sometimes many of those games from 20 years ago, games like my background here, people don't have the source code, or they do, and there's like all kinds of politics, like, can you get the source code? Yeah, let me ask the manager over there, the server, and then things on backup in some farm somewhere. And so you don't get it. And so we use emulation to just run those games. You might say, well, emulation already exists on PC and stuff like that. Yeah, it does. But we're talking mostly about consoles here. We believe form factors is important. So if you're playing like say a Nintendo game, you want to play with a controller, and you're more likely to have a controller if you play on the Switch or on the PlayStation. And then sometimes you want value-added features. So like, many of those old games, surprisingly, are frustrating for modern audience. So like, you die all the time. And so people would like to have a rewind feature or like a save state feature. Like anytime, like, oh, I just die. Okay, just rewind the game. And so that's basically what we do. So we've been doing technology and providing a technology to either other developers or publishers, enable them to do this.
So you started by accident. Can you please tell that story? I was going to ask you, were you having this problem? Did you really want to play some old game and you were feeling frustrated, or how did it really?
Yeah, so I've always been like a retro gamer in the sense that I'm never up to date on my game. I basically, in my track record, I think I played like 10 hours of PS3. It was Final Fantasy 13, and that's it. So I still have a big backlog to go there. So I guess I'm the good candidate to enjoy those old games. That being said, I had a job, full time, like people I have in the industry. I work at Ubisoft, like you mentioned, and other companies. But, I had contacts within, bigger company, and they wanted us to do like, hey, can you guys help us with this emulation software thing and experimental project? No, you're not going to be employees. This is the contract for you, blah, blah. Like, all right, let's do this. Now I have a full-time job and a part-time job. Okay. Yeah. And then, this part-time job, like kind of successful. They're like, well, can you get more stuff done? I'm like, yeah, but now it's a full-time job. Now I have two full-time jobs. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to fail both full-time jobs if I don't quit one of them. So I got to make choice. And it might sound cringe here, but the choices are easy to make when you think long-term. Like, do I keep the easy, comfortable job? And then when I'm old, I will say, like 30 years ago, 40 years ago, I had this choice I could have made and never did it. I don't know what could have happened? Or do I take this new job, quit my comfortable job, do it, and then I won't regret that if it fails. I would say, well, I tried something, I learned something from it, and I'm going to reuse that experience elsewhere. So anyway, once that decision was made, quit the main job, and then contract keeps going on. We get asked to hire more people, and then we build a company from that. And then with the profit, yes, it's a business. With the profit, there's two choices. You can just keep it, and there's no fun in that. So with the profit, we fund other ventures. So we've been trying to, either build technology that we can use ourselves to get more contracts. Published game, like recently we just published, I think a few weeks ago, Micro Mage. It's an homebrew NES game that's now available on PS4 and PS5. So yeah, that's basically it. And so we built this thing for 4 years. So yeah.
Yeah. So quite some time. You started in 2020?
2020 would be around, the company was founded, but it was more like this contract based. 2021 got more serious, and then, things ramped up from there. And we grew up quickly.
And how did you meet your co-founder? Was this someone you had worked with in the past?
Oh, it was a friend. Yeah, we had talked back in the days on internet really chat, IRC. I guess that's like Discord before Discord was something.
Yeah.
And so we had interest in Super Nintendo games and programming. And, from there we found more people, and that's it. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's a good story. And you started this company. I think this is the best part, while you were traveling the world. So were you in like a Sprinter van on a hotspot? Tell me more about that.
I mean, yeah. So, I have a family, I have kids. We had this dream of traveling the world. Of course, it's expensive. And then, we ended up preparing that trip just before the pandemic happened. So we ended up starting the travel Airbnb through the United States at the beginning. And then once the pandemic was over, once it calmed down and the borders were open again for a few countries, we decided to travel again. But by this time, the company had grown. And since we're a remote-only company, it kind of made sense. Like, it was still possible. Time zone didn't make it hard. Being like, we were in Europe at some point, in New Zealand, Japan, and Singapore, Korea, Indonesia, everywhere. So time to time, yeah. And sometimes, so like say in New Zealand, for example, I'm an early bird. So I would just wake up around 4, 5 a.m. and then I have my meetings there, which is perfect because, from 4 to 5 to 9, 10 a.m., they're about the US time and European time, you can match them. And then you're like, all right, I'm free after that. When it's 12 hours difference, it's like impossible, right? So what I ended up doing is that it forced me to focus on the long-term value of the company instead, because all the operational stuff would happen while I sleep. I wake up and then, you're full of emails and full of Slack messages that you have not responded to. So obviously things just move on, and while you're working, nobody's there. And so now it's come kind of quiet. So it really forced you to think about work in a synchronous way, how to delegate work. So sometimes I feel I was actually good. We also met people. I mean, during travel, I was in Japan, for example. So we met with video game developers there. I was in Italy. I met with someone from the open source software. So we tried to family, schooling, and business all mixed up together, which is both great and bad. Yes.
Great. I mean, it's hard, but that's amazing. You're living my dream, so I'll pick your brain a little bit later. What was the state of emulation technology when you started, and how are you seeing it evolve?
That's a good question. There's like technological aspect of it. There's the political aspect. There's the business. Techno-wise, I think it's just evolving like linearly. Like I was asked basically, what's a retro console? What's a retro game? What's a classic game? And I didn't have a good answer back then. Now I think I do. It's basically one generation away, I think. So like about 20 years or 10 years, like in terms of people, I mean. It's whatever you have not played when you were a kid, I guess, or couldn't play. So I guess the evolution is now, I guess PS3 is retro. PS4 will become retro maybe in 5-10 years. That's kind of weird because, games are still coming out there. So I guess emulation gets easier and harder at the same time. Like, those old NES game, for example, the small kind of easy to emulate.
Yeah.
PS3 might be harder to emulate, but at the same time, it's more streamlined. There's like strange stuff going on in the hardware. Things are a bit more streamlined. Without going too technical, like it has a GPU, it has a CPU. I mean, there's a way to understand like when, for example, the game access save data, like, it will tell the operating system, I need to save a game. Well, when you're on PS1, it's not really like that. It's just the game just access the save data, just use it. So now you have to figure it out. And for the rest, I mean, what we've pushed is console emulation. And unfortunately, a lot of the business side there is a bit less known because most consoles have NDAs. So if you want to be a developer for the Nintendo Switch or PlayStation or Xbox, you need to sign an account with them, and then all the software that you have to use, you can't really talk about it. So a lot of work is being done by open source emulation on those proprietary consoles, but then that work is not being pushed back to the open source community because you just can't. It's full of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that aspect of the business. And do you think that you talked about these source code adventures where people cannot end up accessing it? Do you think that people will set themselves up in a different way? So when you are doing a PS4 game, when it's retro, it will be easier to acquire the source code, or you think there are still all of these different challenges that occur?
I think the challenge will be different because now we have online features and DLCs and, online accounts. So your next game, your old Zelda 1 game will play forever. Well, it will be emulated, or if you take care of your cartridge and stuff, have a nest behind the store here. But it still runs. It's there. It's no online feature there. Your Fortnite game will probably be totally different, right? You can emulate it, but it depends on the community, the map, the DLC, the season pass, or whatever they're doing. So that's harder. Now, what do you do with that?
What do you do?
Yeah, one solution is, just cut it. You just remove all the multiplayer stuff. But if your game is online only, well, okay. You miss that. The other solution is emulate the multiplayer networking. Yes, it's very expensive, very costly. There's all kind of certification issues. So yeah, the answer, unfortunately, right now is you just remove it. Is it going to be easy? Is people getting source code? I think things are a bit more streamlined. I mentioned the political aspect. Older games also have an issue of figuring out who owns the IPs is sometimes unknown. In the sense that you talk to those companies without naming them. Recent game, they have good contracts, they got good lawyers or whatever. Those old contracts are like, yeah, we were beginning our company, we didn't really do things the right way. There's this person that has some rights there and this other person here. So now if you want to do this game, we need to talk with them. And then, I'm not sure. I think there's an updated version of the contract, but they actually caught on fire. And this is a true story. And like, all right. So that sounds like a lot of trouble. And that's not a tech problem I just mentioned. It's just a communication problem. So
yeah. Okay, so if a company is creating a game today and really wants to be able to have their game saved so people can play it in whatever years when PS11 is out, or maybe they'll rename it, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
From a contractual perspective, do you have any advice on what to do and how to do it right?
That's a good question.
Talk with your lawyer. Yes. A disclosure. You are not a lawyer, I think.
I mean, I have my dream. If you want to talk dream, I can say my dream. Dream is, books, music. Their books are 2,000 years old, right? Obviously, they're not copyrighted anymore, but they still will sell. People can still republish them and make money. Why? Because people the text is free. But the book itself, the commentary around the book, let's say the Bible, whatever. Any of those books can still be reprint, no problem. That's cool because text is text, right? You just write the text and that's it. Music, same thing. You listen to music, you can put in a different formats. Video games have this, I mentioned the form factor. They require you to have the console to play it. They require you to have the TV. I have some games here I own, Shadow Hearts 2 on the PS2. It's the real game there. If I want to play it, I need to get my PS2 out. All right, so I need to get my PS2 out. Now I need an HDMI adapter. I need to set this up, and I need to find my memory card, and the thing is set up properly, and this is bad.
or a big project for you.
It's a big project, but for me, it's fine. But I mean, for the
Yeah.
mass,
It's
it's
not.
become annoying. Like, what if instead you could go Netflix or Switch and just say, well, you can buy this game for $10? Like, all right, that sounds better. I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
It's just more convenient. So I feel like there is a mismatch between, talking about a dream, the laws were written like, 100 years copyright for books, because after 100 years, what you do, you just copy the book and continue. And games have a lifespan of about 20 years, maybe 10 years. So I'm not saying that the game should lose their copyrights, but maybe there should be a way for this game to be like accessible again and just let people do it. And if the game is really cool, they could still republish it and they would still own that new copy and people can copy it. But the old one would be like, all right, do whatever you want and, put it back. That's the dream.
Yeah, and everybody that creates games really creates them because they love them and they want it to be shared with the world. And it's obviously so devastating if you lose that ability. So I think that makes sense. Tell me about the first project that you ever worked on. So you were contracting with your co-founder, or it was just you?
We're connecting with my co-founder, yes.
Okay. And
I don't know. I mean, I can't really talk about the games we did there. So.
Well, you don't really need to give specifics, but I guess in the evolution, right, since you started, what are some things that you've really learned on how to, I don't know, streamline processes? And I'm not sure what you can say versus not say, or just.
Yeah. I think what we can say is, I mean, having good tools is important. Like, we release with them about 3 games a month right now, which is, when you think about it, nobody's doing 3 games a month. Like we re-release them. We are not building the game, right? The games were already done 20 years ago. So, but still, the fact is like we're porting 3 games a month, more or less. In order to do this, we have to do things a bit differently. So yeah, good tools, good communication, try to do emulation at scale. Like, we have an auto test system. We have dev kits that whenever engineers make change on the code, it will run all those tests and then take screenshot of like 100 games and compare the screenshot against a reference screenshot. So if you're fixing something in one of the game and then it breaks another game, then you get alerted by this. It's not a perfect system, but things like that. So that's the thing you learn. We also learn, again, non-technical problem. Lots of assets need to be removed from the game sometime, unfortunately. Like red crosses, they're protected. You can't show red cross anymore. A lot of old games have a bunch of red cross inside of them. So we change them for health pack, for example.
Oh.
So we had to remove them. If you play Twisted Metal, for example, there's a Hollywood sign. Now it says Los Angeles. Why? I don't know. Somebody said we can't show Hollywood. That's part of the movie. Things like that. So we found texture with the face of someone inside of it. We don't have the contracts anymore and the publisher doesn't have anymore. And they're like, well, is this original game like the face of the person in that inside that picture there? Were they allowed to do it? We don't know. So can you remove it? I know it goes against the purist interests of preserving video games, but it's part of the commercial aspect of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then, I mean, even if I watch TV shows or movies from 20 years ago, I cringe because the things that were socially acceptable to say and do then are so not okay today. So are there, like you talked about the Red Cross.
Oh, yeah.
How do you deal with making a game, like you said, balancing it being true for the players who want to play the original thing with being appropriate to release today?
Yeah, it's just a publisher call right now. So it's whatever they say. We had one game where it was full of pentagram and we have to replace them with, I don't know, I think triangle or square or things like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just the text. They might be saying things like you said, you're reading this, you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to fly now.
My kids' book from the 90s. I'm like, I don't think you anymore.
So I think it depends. Like we're doing some Japanese game right now, untranslated one. So some things are cultural specific. I think it's the same challenge as translator when they translate books. Sometimes it's just like language, but sometimes there's like cultural aspect that doesn't really match or doesn't make sense for like the reader. Like, okay, now I need to change this thing or explain it better. So it's hard. I think translators have to take some opinions sometimes when they translate things. So
yeah. So I mean, you're doing the actual port and the emulation of the game, but there's somebody else that's making the call on what should and should not be the game, and they're telling you're not making that decision. Right
now, no. Right. You mentioned mostly a technological company. Think of it like the Unreal Engine or Unity of game development, but for emulation.
I like that. Yeah, that makes sense. So I want to know more about your entrepreneurial journey because starting a company is not sunshines and rainbows. It's actually
No, it's not all the time.
now I started my company. I was like, oh, I'm gonna have flexibility. I'm gonna have a kid, and you know, I I do have flexibility, but I have flexibility to work a lot and pick when I'm working a lot and not working. So it's a little different. But what are some of the most impactful lessons that you have learned since you started?
Um, your role changes. So, when we were two, it's basically two guys in the garage. You just get stuff done.
Yeah.
When you're five, okay, you still five guys in the garage, but it works. When you're 10, no, it doesn't work anymore. Now this time start having distinct role and ideas. So now you need to change a bit your role. Okay, right. It's not too bad, right? You just like, oh, I'm going to make two teams, like a few responsibility here and there, and that's it. All right, it works. When you're 20, that doesn't work anymore again. So you're like, oh, well, I want my company to be efficient. How do I make sure things are fine? How do I leave enough space for people to succeed? How do I set expectation? And I know I fail a lot. I learn a lot. Um, do we hire fast? Do we hire slow? Do we take a risk? Usually the answer is yes. Um, so there's the lesson. The other lessons is time management. It's easy to become passionate and it's fun when it's your company, right? So you can work 60 hours a week, 80 hours, 100 hours. And if it's fun, sure. But there's a limit of where it becomes unproductive, where you're working on the wrong thing, for example. Maybe one thing you're working on, I don't know, like I'm just managing my email for 5 hours. Like, well, was that useful? Did I get things done? Should I maybe hire someone to do this for me instead? And maybe I can think about meeting people for business instead, which would give more value to the company. So
Yeah.
that's the thing I had to learn. I read a bunch of books about strategy, time management, and even about, being passionate and depressed sometimes because you're building things, you succeed, and you're like, well, then what? So, so right now, I think we have done more than 90 games over less than 3 years. So,
Wow.
somebody just like, wow, that's cool. But, when you think about it, you're like, wow, next year I'm going to do 120 and then 150 and 120.
That's you, the entrepreneur, and you're like, yes, this is good, but now what's my
Exactly.
next?
Like, what's the next challenge? We could do this. We could do that. And now that's scary because you have to make a decision. Like you can't just say, well, we're going to try A, B, C, D because you're going to fail again. So you have to say, well, we're going to try B, but maybe B is the wrong answer. Maybe you should try C, but you don't know until you try B. So
An existential dread there. Am I making the right decision? Especially as you grow, right? So it's hard. Yes, I can resonate a lot with what you're saying. What do you think went right for you? Like, was starting in the pandemic a big advantage for you because people were more interested in games? Because, I mean, business is, it is skill mixed with right place, right time. There's a lot of different factors. And
yeah,
I
I
think
think
why.
what went right, we had the right contacts with a few key people.
Okay.
I helped like finding the first contract. I think the
Mhm.
next thing is I have some recruiting experience, some hiring experience, but we were able to find very specialized people in emulation. And I don't think bigger companies would be able to do that. And I think, like I said, but Ubisoft would not be hiring the people we hire because they would not fit any exact model they're looking for.
Yeah.
But we knew what to look for. So we're like, okay, let's try this. Not fail. Let's try that. Okay, success. All right. And yeah, we hired some people that did not work. We hired some people that did work. Obviously more the second. And I felt that went well. And also we were remote only. So again, it's a trade-off, right? Remote only, fine. You can hire people from anywhere. Now the word is also means that the people you hire from anywhere can work anywhere, can leave you. Also means that it's hard to have a sense of camaraderie. Like, there's nobody, you're alone. Like after this call, the screen disappear and you're back to yourself. And when you have someone next to you, it's not like you want to manage them, but you see them working on something, right? You're working on your thing. They're playing a game or testing some things. Some explosion happened on the screen. I don't know. You look around like, oh, this is cool. What's going on here? You just chat a little bit. There's a lot of value from those little things. There's also a lot of value of being alone. Like you'll be able to focus on your thing. So it's like, sometimes I wish we could do both. Like, like being on remote and then to an office somewhere and stay there like a week and then go back out remote.
It's a lot of fun. I mean, they say the same thing. There's so much value in meeting people in person. but it's hard and it's expensive. And I think maybe also an afterthought, like, hey, I'm going to hire the best people in the best locations. And then it's like, we have people in 11 countries to come together. It's a massive expense, right? It's really different and challenging. But we
Yeah.
did a company, we're remote too, and we did a company offsite and we had fun and we did a cooking class together and it was awesome. It was amazing to see people in person. But I think that's a big trade-off too. Do you hire the right person within the vicinity of where you live or where your office is? Because that's a very different.
No, right now, no, we have none. But we did try to have them like in a little, like we have a bunch of people in Europe right now. So they're
Yeah,
together.
centralized at least.
So at least they don't feel lonely alone there. So like when the rest of the team is sleeping, they can still work together. But that's still hard because it means that you expect them to be on the same project, but maybe they won't be on the same project because, so many reasons. So now you get multiple access to the people, the project, time zone. If you're looking for,
Culture also, I think this is something people don't
Mm,
really think about. And when I started my business, I talked about her on my podcast before, but my friend Julie has this company called Curiosity Based. And it's about getting curious on the way you give and receive respect, because that's very different per person and that's very different also per country. Like countries have different
mm,
what's respectful. In some countries, it's very respectful to be passive. I live in Seattle. Everyone is so passive aggressive, and that's polite. And to me, I'm not like this. I like Eastern Europe culture better in this way, just because they're like, hey, here's what's going on. But for them, right, that is polite. It's polite to say, I am having this problem. Or when you say, how's your day going? Like, my day is horrible, and here's why. But in America, they're just going to tell you, good, right? This is what's polite. So I think it can be a big challenge because maybe
mm.
people are feeling frustrated or not understanding each other, but they're both trying to be polite in the way that is polite for that.
That is true. I don't think we have had that issue that much, but there's always the risk of like people, like we're engineers. We have lots of introverts in the company. People
Yes.
like to write in text and email. Sometimes I always tell people if they have a big subject to talk about, you should do it in person because no matter what you write, even if it's nice, it's going to be misinterpreted.
Yes.
I mean, you can still write a document, share it with the person, and have the meeting with them. At least now you can read and talk, and you realize those on-site are very good for that too. There's a human behind the Slack avatar, the Discord name. It's not just like a piece of text, and it's actually someone that has like feelings and passion and fears and everything. So it's nice to meet those people. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. See how tall they are. That's always shot.
Yes.
But it seems like you're hiring the most niche people, so you really need to find niche people, and they're not all in one area. So, sounds
Yeah.
like
So far, yeah.
yeah. So, how have you felt like you're able to build camaraderie in a remote environment? Do you have any tips or tricks on how to keep
I
people connected?
mean, yeah, be transparent. Like I said, we've been not that good at this, but sometimes because we've been too busy. Try that Friday, play a game together, find something. Again, the reason why we fail, I feel like it's an excuse. Time zone makes it hard. Like everyone on Friday at 11 a.m. Like, well, okay, now it's 8 a.m. in the West Coast. It's almost dinner time in Europe. So like, yeah, no, change the time all the time. So that's one trick to do on site. I know they're expensive, but if you think about it, normal companies would have like office expense, right? They need to buy furniture and rent. And so take that money. And if you're afraid of the cost, put that money in a spreadsheet, see how much it would have cost you. Well, that's your budget for your on-site now. So maybe that's one way to see it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
I think,
yeah, and yes, on-sites are like, if people are so small, they're hard to plan. Like, travels and hotels and people are coming from everywhere. And planes will be late and some of them will arrive one day later and they will feel like they missed out on the big game you just mentioned, the cooking class. And like, I didn't go to the cooking class. It sucks. Well, but do your best.
yeah. Well, it's good advice, right? Things are always going to go wrong. I
Yes.
like what you said about your breaking points too, and how you have to change how you think about the company and how the company is structured 1 to 2, 5, 10, 20.
Yeah.
Uh, what are you hoping? Are you hoping to double down on your technology and then be able to have other people that are not you execute by using your technology, almost like a license? Or are you going to grow?
Yes.
What's your
Yes.
strategy, if you don't mind?
Yeah. Well, no, I don't mind. I think building a I mean, if people will reach out because they heard of this, then I'm happy about it.
Yeah.
With love. I mean, if we can use the technology for our customers and we can use it for ourselves and we can also help other customers with their own technology, maybe there's a way for us to license the technology to others. Now, is there a market for this? I don't know. But there's only one note to try. So only one way to try is just to do it. So unless we do it, someone else will do it at some point.
Yeah.
Uber, the idea is simple. You just tell someone you want to go somewhere, and then someone comes and he bring you there. So there's nothing magic about this. It's just a taxi system, but faster.
Yeah.
But someone had to build it. So I think it's the best thing in the world. I know there's like a kind of the point is, going back to the SDK, if we build a technology like this, yes, I would love to make it easier to scale, because I was mentioning like we meet people in Japan and talk about games and can we get the rights to this game, and you negotiate with them. It takes you 6 months. I heard some game takes you 3 years because you need to build a relationship with them. That doesn't scale. Like, our company will do a few hundred games if we do this, but there's thousands of games. And so why don't we let other people do it? Maybe if we provide technology that they can reuse, so now everybody gets a piece of the pie, it moves the technology forward. As long as we move things forward, there will be business. People will figure out how to make money out of this, and that's fine.
Yeah.
So.
That makes sense. Yeah. And it'll be something bigger than you too, right? That's kind of the goal. Like, what can you build?
Exactly. People build things we didn't expect. Unity now is being used to do design, industrial design. And I saw back in the days, people were using Unreal Engine to do a car simulator, like self-driving car using Unreal. Like, I don't think when they made Unreal Tournament, they were thinking about self-driving car. No, they were thinking about people doing deathmatch and shooting each other. But it came to that. So you can't know what people are going to build.
Yeah. And if you put it out there, people will definitely love it and surprise you. I have a question too, and maybe it's an obvious thing, but I read on your website there are 12,000 classic games available on PlayStation and 6,000 on Xbox and 4,000 on Nintendo. Why does PlayStation win?
Why does PlayStation win? Have more games?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't know, actually. It might be because the Japanese market has so many games.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering, is it that there are just more games in general that have been developed for PlayStation and that's why? Or people who have a PlayStation are more nostalgic for old games? Or what is this correlation?
I mean, I think this is just the amount of total games available. I think there's just more game on PS1, PS2. Like, PlayStation was very popular. Nintendo is popular too, but it has like I feel like Nintendo was Zelda and Mario. They're a very great game, and they sell like 30 millions. But there's not like 100 of them. Well, it's getting there. I don't know. Actually, we have to check again.
I'm interested in that in general. So I also like to highlight on the podcast, there's ups and downs of business, like we talked about. Sometimes people are very intentional, sometimes not, but nobody gets where they are without a lot of help from mentors, from books, but really just from other people, right? I mean, you have so many questions when you start your business. How do I open up this? And then it just continues and continues. But is there anyone that you can really think about that has helped you a ton or clarified questions for you? Like, do you have a go-to person, if it's a mentor or someone, a coach or somebody that's really formal, or just someone that's always there to guide you?
Right. I don't have a coach, but there's a lot of people I reach out to ask for guidance. There was like old manager so I work at Twitch Interactive, and then there were like VP there, and sometimes I just had a call with them and say, hey, what do I do with this situation? What do you think? And you just like, sometimes you already have the answer, by the way. You already know what to do, but you just need someone to actually validate. But you don't tell them your answer. You just talk about the problem, and then you come up with, like, all right, this is the same thing as I was thinking. So it's like, sometimes a bit of like self-confidence, like, okay, let's do this.
I got it.
There were people from my Ubisoft when I started, when I was green, learning how to do video games, and, they show me how to be a good leader. When you lead a team, you're leading a football team, let's say. All right, so you got your very great players. You focus on their time on them. You also got your players that are not so good. then you need to focus some time on them to have them grow. Maybe they're junior, maybe they just change team, so they need to figure out. And then there's your average players, and sometimes you forget them because they're just doing fine. Like you're spending time on the bottom and top, and I think that's wrong. You need to spend time there too because those are maybe your future growth. But it's easy to forget them because your two extremes are taking so much of your time. So I felt like I learned from that just watching my boss there. I guess I have a handy mentor where I became a manager. I went back to being a contributor, and I had like a micromanager at some point. And you learn and when you do that, first you learn a lot, and two, you don't learn what not to do. And also, I would actually recommend people if they want to stay on the non-manager track, maybe just become a manager for a little while and come back after, because now you know exactly what your manager expects from you and what they need. Like, why is he asking about this document? Well, you know what? Maybe he's in a meeting to promote you, and you just need some information about this. So he's not just nagging you. Actually, like just provide him and do it today, because you're getting a promotion next month. But if you haven't been my manager, you won't understand those things going on, and so it requires a bit of that perspective.
That's true. Like when you interview candidates, right? You become a hiring manager and you interview hundreds of candidates, and then you get interview process works. And then if you interview, you're like, oh, this is why they're asking me that. This is what they're trying to get at. So
Yep.
That's good advice. It's always good to be on both sides of the fence.
I mean, yeah. As for books, I feel like there's a lot of self-guidance books. There's all kind of leadership books. I feel like most of them, my only advice would be don't read them all. Like just read the beginning sometimes. Like the first 30 or 50 pages may be enough just to get the gist of it. And if you don't fully understand it, sure, keep going on. But usually it would just go on by example there. So just go to the next book. And
advice for that is Audible at 1.5x. When
that
you're walking
too.
your dog. Yeah, that's the strategy. I have one last question before I ask it. I want to point people to your website, implicitconversions.com. The last question, from your perspective, what do you think the future of video game hardware is?
That's a good question. I don't know. Well, I'm in a niche market, right? So I see all this analog 3D that came out. So basically they are redoing a Nintendo 64 using hardware. So that is coming up with hardware emulation of old titles. I saw this is from Game Boy also coming out. This is like a new market for Game Boy games. It's a new market for the NES game. There's probably going to be a PS6. I have absolutely no data about the PS6. Maybe it will allow people to program their own hardware. So like, maybe there will become a case where you have an FPGA inside the PlayStation 6 and you can use that FPGA to customize an emulator for your PS3. And now you do hardware emulation using software. I know some people, maybe 5 years ago, would say that the future is the cloud gaming. Well, I don't think so. Like Stadia was a good experiment, but it did not work. I think it was too expensive for them to keep up. And also there's all the latency issues. Future of gaming is there's a lot of politics, as I mentioned. There's like those copyrights and, there might be some legal things going on there that might actually influence what's available on that. I could go on, it is all the microtransaction things going that I feel like a lot of games have become almost like gambling game, where it's not a game anymore. The game is just like a side effect of the micro cycle there. But there's still an awesome game coming out. So I don't know. I play all games. So I haven't played PS4, PS5 game. I'm still having PS3 here. So
yeah. You'll have to do that maybe over your holiday break.
yeah. Well, I have to emulate them first, then I can play them. So.
It's true. That is necessary. We've been talking to Robin Lavallée, CEO and co-founder of Implicit Conversions. Robin, where can people go to partner with you to emulate their game or learn more about you or work for you?
Yes, there are two ways. They can go on the website and then just click on the syrup engine because we're Canadian, so we love maple syrup. So that's why. Then you can find forms to reach us out. We also have a Discord. I don't have the link here, but look for Implicit Conversions Discord. You can talk about emulation game, retro games, and favorite features, and chat there. The little community is available as well. And yeah, so just an email. We read them all for real.
Yeah, I'll link the link in the podcast. Thank you.
Thank you, Lizzie.
Thanks so much for listening to the show this week. To catch all the latest from Here's Waldo, you can follow us on LinkedIn. Be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes. We'll see you next time.